Vice President Kamala Harris has officially announced her economic plan, which is centered around an opportunity economy. It aims to support middle-class Americans by tackling specific economic challenges such as inflation, housing, and high health costs. In this video, I'm going to discuss some of the glaring problems behind a lot of these economic policies and how it's really not going to bring the most positive results for you. Welcome to the AlterNate Vantage. My name is Nate, and this is where I provide a different look about financial literacy, news, and generational wealth. If you like that kind of content, then don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, back to the video. Quick note. I don't make political videos. I don't care where people land, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. It really doesn't matter to me at all. I'm just providing analysis on the things that they say. So don't think I'm swinging a particular direction if I start bashing particular ideas. Okay, let's move on. First thing first, let me break down the components of this plan. Number one, Harris proposes a federal ban on grocery price gouging to combat higher food prices. Number two, she wants to construct 3 million new units, and in addition to that, she wants to provide a $25,000 in a down payment assistance program. Number three, she wants to provide a $6,000 per child tax credit for the first year of life. Number four, she wants to extend the $35 cap on insulin prices. And number five, she wants to cut taxes for middle class and eliminate taxes on tips. She also plans to raise the minimum wage for working families. Okay, that's the overall summary of the plan here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to approach these in terms of most damaging to least damaging. So first on the list is the minimum wage increases. And if you really want to get a good understanding of how business income works and how it impacts the economy as well as business profit and revenue, then go check out one of my other videos which explains that in complete detail. But let's get back to the minimum wage discussion. All right, I'm going to give you an example by the numbers of how exactly this plays out. Let's say, for example, you have a company that does $100 million in revenue. And let's just say their labor costs them 25% of the revenue. So in this case, they'd be paying their workers $25 million for all the associated labor for that company. Now, we're going to make a quick assumption, and we're just going to assume that every single laborer they have is all earning minimum wage, from the person on the bottom of the company to the person on the top of the company. Obviously, this is not realistic. I'm just showing you how this process works and how it impacts the company directly, so just bear with me for a second. So right now, labor costs the company $25 million. Now, we're assuming that every minimum wage earner is earning $15 an hour. But let's just say minimum wage increases to, I don't know, $20 an hour, like in California, as an example. So if all of the labor previously cost them $25 million and they're all earning $15 per hour, but now we want to increase that to $20 per hour, then the labor cost is going to go from $25 million all the way up to $33.25 million. So instead of labor costing the company 25% of the revenue, it's now costing the company roughly 33% of the revenue. That's an increase of $8.25 million. Just bumping up minimum wage from $15 an hour to $20 an hour. That's the change. Now, I'll keep things simple and just say, all right, it's now costing the company an additional $8 million a year just to pay their labor costs. Now, this might not seem like a big deal to you, but here's the thing how most companies like to operate, especially at that size. They're trying to get as close to zero as possible. What that means is on the books, there really isn't much of a profit. And so if this company, let's just say it's breaking even, all right, that means all their expenses, everything earned coming into the company is perfectly matched with everything coming out of the company, right? Inputs and outputs. They're breaking even. There is no profit. It's a company that's breaking even. So they did $100 million in revenue. Well, now they have an additional $8 million cost that they have to account for. And so if it's going to cost them more to run the business, a company that was previously breaking even at $100 million is now in the red by $8 million because of hiking up minimum wage. Now, the company can do a few things if it has options. Number one is just to shut down the business and move it somewhere else. You see this happening in California all day, every day. And they're like, hey, we're getting out of California and we're going over here. Elon with Twitter and X is a classic example of that. So they can shut down the business completely or move locations. That's worst case scenario. Median case scenario is they're going to fire some of their employees and hope they can run on a skeleton crew. Because if they can only sustain a $25 million labor cost, then they're going to cut out that $8 million difference by letting people go. And the third case, which is the most likely, and this is what happens every single time we witness minimum wage increases, that company's just going to say, oh, okay, well, instead of doing $100 million in revenue, we now have to do $108 million in revenue. And the easiest way to do that is just increasing prices. So that minimum wage increase that you just got not only more than likely contributed to job losses, but it's also a direct contributor to inflation because prices are going to go higher. And here's the thing with the reality of what the CPI, right, the Consumer Price Index, and real wage growth has taught us. The CPI will outperform, meaning the consumer prices will go up faster than real wage growth occurs. So even if you have a temporary, reprieve in your wage, it goes up from $15 to $20 an hour, and now you're making more money, it feels great. It's only going to feel great for maybe a year or two, and then by the time you hit that third year, you're back at the same point as you were before. So when you look at the balance between minimum wage increases, what that does to the companies, what that does to the economy, increasing job loss, increasing inflation, the cause and effect here, 9 times out of 10 is not so great. And if you really want to see a good example of this, just look at California for all of 2 seconds and you'll see this playing out in real time. Okay, next on the list is going to be the down payment assistance program, which is providing new home buyers or first generational home buyers and a few other categories with up to $25,000 in down payment assistance. First thing I got to say about this is let's think about where this money's coming from. It's tax dollars. I'm just going to leave that statement exactly where it is. You can apply your own relative significance to that idea. So beyond using tax dollars erroneously, let's look at the cause and effect of this kind of stimulus. Right now, the housing market is short, anywhere between 4 to 7 million units, depending on who you talk to, which is pretty significant. So this shortage plus inflation has caused a lot of these home values to be overvalued. The homes are worth way more than they should be right now. So if you introduce something where people all of a sudden have access to an additional $25,000, the down payment they were needing to get into that home of choice, what happens is the values that were previously here, because there's a shortage in the market, and now we're going to increase demand in the market, the values are going to trickle up even further. And this will kind of vary, depend on geographic location, the state you're in, the city you're in. But generally speaking, if you introduce a stimulus like this, demand gets higher, supply gets shorter, so price goes up. Now, this might not seem like an entirely bad thing with values continuing to rise in the housing bubble that we're already in. I'm sure many real estate investors are like, heck yeah, bring it on, because I've been trying to let this property go and we simply cannot sell it fast enough. So they might be excited about that. But what happens when, just like Kamala said, she wants to introduce an additional 3 million units to the market? So if supply dramatically increases, right, and demand, let's just say, stays relatively flat or even goes down a little bit because people are trying to enter the market now. So supply going up, demand relatively going down, that means prices are also going to go down. And also keep in mind the additional supply that will come to the market, because you have many people right now that have been sitting on properties that they want to sell but haven't been able to sell because interest rates are too high or they didn't have the down payment in place to get into the other home. People are upsizing, people are downsizing. There's a lot of stagnant moves right now in the market because people just don't have the liquidity to make it happen. And so if we introduced the liquidity, so now people have down payment assistance, you're going to see more of those people who were previously holding onto their property now letting it go because they can get into that next one that they were seeking. So not only will we have the 3 million units coming into the market, but we'll also have everyone else who has been sitting on their properties for this whole time, waiting for something like this to happen so they can get into their next property. So supply would just go through the roof as more of these build-out projects are completed. And this, in a way, would be similar in creating a crash that we saw in 2008. which have more to do with the banking and lending side, but more to follow on that. So think about this for a second. If we increase supply, decrease demand, prices are going to go down. If you have all those people who receive that $25,000 down payment assistance and they put it on that home, and that's all they put on there, and now they're paying on that home. If the value of that home decreases by 10%, 20%, 30%, right? Because supply is going up, demand's going down, so the value is going to go down. That means all of these people who just bought these homes on this new economic stimulus, they're going to be underwater on that debt. What does that mean? It means their debt is up here. Let's just say it's $500,000, but their home is only worth, let's just say, $450,000. So they're paying on a debt that's worth $500 and living in a home that's worth $450. They're underwater. Why is that significant? Well, it's not significant if you're trying to stay in that home forever. That's your forever home. You're wanting to get into it anyways. You can afford it right now. You can afford the payments. You're locked in at a fixed interest rate for 30 years. So this might not be a huge concern to you, but it should be a concern to you if we have other economic conditions impacting the market as a whole. What are the other economic conditions? Businesses are extremely tight right now. And going back to my most damaging point from before, minimum wage increases, if something like that takes place, we are going to witness more businesses shut down. We are going to witness more job loss. We are going to witness more cutoffs, layoffs, and everything else. So if we do witness something like that, then let's just say you had someone who got into that home. Great, fantastic, but now they're underwater. And what happens if they were a minimum wage earner? Well, if they're a minimum wage earner and they just got laid off because the company can no longer afford to keep them employed, well, now they're in a home where they're underwater by $50,000. Remember, $500,000 in debt, $450,000 home that it's valued at. And obviously, a minimum wage earner wouldn't qualify for a home like this, but I'm just giving you an example. They're still underwater in that debt. And so if they foreclose, they're not only going to be responsible for that $450,000 that the home is worth, they're also going to be responsible for that $50,000 deficit. Okay, if they foreclose on that home. Not to mention that if they do foreclose on that home, it's going to drive the value of all the other surrounding properties even lower because we have not only more stock coming to the market, but generally speaking, when a home forecloses, it's not in the best condition because the homeowner wasn't able to keep up with it. So the value naturally drops. So what happens here is you have more supply coming in, you have more foreclosures coming in, more job loss, more foreclosures, more job loss, more foreclosures, more supply, less demand, values plummet and they drop fairly quickly. In my own estimation in this downward cycle, we're looking at anywhere on the low end, a 10% correction in the housing market, and that's on that's a dream of a low end. And on the high end, I'm thinking we're looking at probably a 40% correction unless something completely drastic happens in the rest of the world in terms of global finance. Okay, number 3 on the list is the protection of price gouging. All right. This is absolutely useless, and it's just a political statement to encourage people to hate big businesses and corporations. That's exactly what it is. That's what it will always be. Price gouging is just insane, okay? Price gouging is synonymous with we want to limit the amount of profit a company can make, which is absolutely insane when you think about how our capitalistic markets work to begin with. So just, oh man, all right, we got to keep moving here. If you're living in a free market, which is what we're supposed to be in, right? Without too much input or restraint or regulation from the government, then the whole concept is completely contrary to that reality, right? The prevention of price gouging is literally government influence on the free and open markets. And I get it. People love to pick on big businesses because they make so much money and, it's just greedy corporations. But we really got to peel this onion back a little bit because the corporations and big businesses are encouraged to do things like this. And of course, competition helps offset how much they can actually, pull out of the free economy. But I want to peel the onion back just to really observe what's going on here and why companies are trying to maximize profits and everything else in things that some people might call price gouging. Because here's what's happening. If you're raised in the US, then your only financial education that you get from first grade, 12th grade, even through college, okay, depending on the degree that you choose, are very simple principles. Number 1, save. Number 2, invest in your retirement. And what does that look like? Well, generally speaking, you're going to be encouraged to get a 401k. You'll be encouraged to have an IRA, maybe your own, investment brokerage account. Either way, you are encouraged to put your money into the stock market. All right. So if you put your money in the stock market, why are you putting it there? Well, you're putting it there because you want the value of that stock to go up. You're putting it there because you want to receive dividends. Well, let's think about this for a second. The money you're putting into the stock market, who's it going to? It's going to the big businesses and corporations. And they're using those investments to make more money, meaning more profit, meaning higher revenue. So if you're saying, yes, let's fight price gouging, and then at the same time, you have your own money in the stock market, you're essentially saying, yes, I want my stocks to be valued less. I want their value to go down. I want my dividend to be lower, please. I'm not looking to retire anytime soon because price gouging is a problem. And hear me out, okay? Let's just say that, hey, Nate, I don't have a 401k. I don't have retirement. I barely have savings. I don't care about that. I'm just trying to live day to day. So yeah, everyone else can screw their stocks. I'm just trying to put food on the table, and this price gouging is killing me. I hear you, but keep in mind, these businesses and the economy they provide, meaning the labor force they provide, the services they provide, the goods they provide, is way more impactful than people realize. Okay, businesses can't just cough up money just because they want to. And so what's happening here in the areas where we might see price gouging is it's actually just a correction in the market right now. Here's what's happening. The goods that we need to use and buy every single day, their values have increased dramatically just in the past few years. Like beef is up 40%, milk is up 94%, fuel, obviously, super, super high. And so we're looking at that like, man, they're price gouging us because revenues have been an all-time high, profits are at an all-time high. And that's not really the case. What's taking place here is companies are strategically increasing their prices on things we have to buy because no one right now is doing any sort of discretionary spending, which is where companies make a majority of their profits to begin with. And so what they're doing is they're taking losses on things that are discretionary, like TVs, electronics, technologies and things like that. They're taking losses on those items and they're making up for it in the items that everyone has to pay for. This is a means to an end to balance out the market to make sure the system can literally keep itself on its own 2 feet. If you institute practices where companies can only instill a certain amount of margin on a product, like a 10% margin or a 20% margin, whatever the case may be, that company will literally collapse under its own weight. Because think about it. By the time those products hit the shelves, the companies have already put all the money it takes to get those products in front of you there. They've spent the dollars already. They're spending the rest of their time trying to recoup these dollars. And if they can't make those projections, if they can't make those demands that's necessary to continue the business, to keep it going, to get that next line of products, then obviously it's going to crumble under its own weight. So price gouging is not an effective means in in terms of trying to prevent companies from unfair pricing. Really, you would want to incentivize companies by providing them tax breaks and other benefits that would allow them to give them more space in their margins and then pass those savings on to the consumer. Because when you increase costs for a company, they always pass those costs on to the consumer. And that's what you really, really have to remember here. Okay, the last two I'm going to bundle together because they're kind of insignificant for the purpose of this conversation. And honestly, they would require whole entire videos on their own. But the tax credit is essentially null and void. In most cases, it's neither money earned nor spent. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of leaning positive towards something like that, providing tax breaks, because it keeps more dollars directly in the economy, depending on where they're being used. And as inconsequential as those dollars may be, it's not making a huge impact on the economy as a whole. The limitation on pricing for insulin is a whole different can of worms because diabetes in the US is its own deep, dark hole of things that I'm probably never going to discuss on this channel. But generally speaking, if we can stick it to pharmaceutical companies and limit them in many different ways, then I'm going to support that 99% of the time. And yes, there are good pharmaceutical companies out there, for those of you who may or may not believe that, either way. And unfortunately, those good companies are being bundled in with the bad. But I think, generally speaking, it's one big, rotten, bad apple with how those companies operate to begin with, and don't provide a lot of true value to the direct economy because they're taking advantage of a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So with that said, that wraps up this video. Just wanted to hit some of those key components and see how they play out in the future. If you have requests about other economic ideas and policies and how they're going to affect us in the future, some secondary and thirdary level of effects, then please leave a comment below. I'd love to digest it and see if I can get it back to you. And don't forget, if you like this video, then like and subscribe. And with that, I will catch you in the next one.